Welcome in, guys. WagerTalk.com. College football week number 6, and what a good one out in the Pac-12, huh? Taking on the UCLA Bruins, the undefeated UCLA Bruins. Will be the one-loss Utah. The Utes, UCLA, 3:30 Eastern Time kickoff. And Merrill, man, if you were a betting man, are you a believer in Chip Kelly and what he's got going on there at UCLA?
Yeah, I mean, 5-0 start. Obviously, it's pretty good. The betting line is always the great indicator, and they're 3-2 against the spread. So I guess in that regard, you can say they're off to a good start. And keep in mind, one of the non-covers, a little misleading, it was against a FCS 1AA team, Alabama State, 45-7 is a 48-point favorite back in week 2. So they are 3-1 ATS, 4-0 straight up in their Division 1A games against FBS opponents. Utah, though, in excellent current form as well. Keep in mind, their only loss, both straight up and against the spread this year, came way back in week 1, and they could have won that game at Florida. Really could have gone either way. They failed to win as a slight favorite, lost by 3. They did bounce back with an easy game against South Utah or Southern Utah, so obviously that was a good scheduling spot. But more importantly, they've got business done since then. Perfect 3-0, straight up in ATS the last 3 weeks, and looked pretty good against Oregon State, to say the least, last week. Now, look, that Oregon State spot was not a good one for the Beavers. Keep in mind they had that near miss against USC the week before. Oregon State had a really good chance of pulling the upset in that game. They still got the cover as a 5-point dog, losing by 3. So put a little bit of an asterisk next to that 42-16 win last week for Utah, but they still did what they had to as a 10.5-point favorite. And by the way, another sign that Oregon State was probably a little flat. They had a 4-0 turnover deficit in that game. This Utah team this season has thrown the ball really well. They've run the ball well, 5 yards per carry, but thrown for 8.5 yards per pass. Pretty good offense overall. But they haven't really been tested against good defensive opponents. The average defense they have faced gives up 6.3 yards per play. UCLA gives up 4.7 yards per play. So this is a substantial step up in class against a good defensive team for the first time this year. So we'll see. You think of Chip Kelly, you think of offense and whatnot, but UCLA is really playing good defense right now. But they also are moving the ball well offensively. Team's also running for over 5 yards a carry, over 8.5 yards per pass, 7 yards per play against a pretty weak schedule of defenses as well. UCLA's opponents allow 6.2, Utah giving up just 4.9. So on the surface, 2 really good offensive teams here, but 2 good defenses that I think remain a little underrated. Totals in that mid-60 range. Class A battle here. The under might be worth a look.
All right, might be leaning towards the under there. Utah, UCLA. Dolan, what do you think there with this big Pac-12 matchup?
Well, Steve mentioned the under there, and, that kind of feeds into what I'm thinking, because I couldn't have been the only one extremely impressed with how they played against Washington last week. They actually entered that game as slight underdogs at home to the Huskies, but it was a complete mismatch over the early part of that game. They went down, 7-zip early, but from that point of the game on, the Bruins dominated them 40-16 to close out the third quarter, and, the game was effectively over. Washington tacking on some touchdowns near the end to give some respectability to that scoreline. But, UCLA definitely moved up my power rankings based off that performance. And, they face a team here in Utah on Saturday who I'm just still not entirely sure where this team kind of ranks on the season. They had that life and death battle against Florida, as Steve mentioned, back in week 1, came up on the wrong side of that result. But I think it's fair to say most people have been disappointed with how the Gators have looked this season. Lost outright to Kentucky in that game post-Utah. Lost again to Tennessee. They rank 103rd in the country in overall yardage defense given up this year as well. So really hard to gauge exactly how good this Utes team are right now, because, look, at the end of the day, you're supposed to look good against the likes of San Diego State. You're supposed to look good against the likes of Arizona State and so on. Blowout wins against those level of teams really doesn't tell us all that much about Utah. So for me, I'm going to roll with the team I trust more in this spot. The team that's impressed me the most, that's UCLA this weekend. And not just the Washington performance either. Thompson Robinson ranks top 10 in total QBR rating this season. He's got one of the country's lowest interception rates. UCLA as a whole rank 8th in the country right now on total offensive yards per game. They're putting up 511.8 yards per game on average. That's 8th best in the country right now. So I think the Bruins here at anywhere above a field goal is the value side of the play. And that's the way I'll be looking to play this one this weekend.
All right, well, 2 of the best. Dorian Thompson Robinson, Cam Rising, 2 of the very best quarterbacks in the country, guys. They're in the Pac-12. Should be a great battle. two of the very best college football handicappers right here, Steve Merrill and Kevin Dolan. They can be found over at WagerTalk.com. Don't wait, guys. Hop on board now. Visit Merrill, visit Kevin Dolan over at WagerTalk. Grab one of those 3-day, 7-day, 30-day all-access packages, and let's make it a very profitable Week 6 in college football.